morning in LA and good evening in London. Welcome to LMU's special webinar titled Pursuing Your Graduate Degree Abroad, LMU Alumni Insights from the UK. My name is Young Sun Pak. I'm a professor of international business and management at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, California, and director of the Center for International Business Education, often called the CIBE or CYBER. Today's program is funded by the grants awarded by the U.S. Department of Education and sponsored by LMU CIBE and Study Abroad Office. LMU is one of 16 universities in the country that receive this very prestigious cyber grants. As part of our cyber mission to help improve global competitiveness of the U.S. businesses, LMU CIBE has organized special lecture series on various important topics of international business and management. Today, in the spirit of celebrating International Education Week, we have prepared a great program to discuss the value of studying abroad and its implications for global talent management. International Education Week was created as a joint initiative of the U.S. Department of State and the Department of Education to promote programs that help American students and educators develop global skills for success in the 21st century. It presents an opportunity to celebrate the benefits of international education and exchange worldwide by highlighting the value of global and cultural competencies. As panelists for this webinar, we have invited two alumni graduates and Professor Susan Murphy. She's chair in leadership development at University of Edinburgh. Professor Ellen Anshaw of LMU will moderate our panel discussion. She's currently staying in London teaching FIE, Foundation for International Education Programs. I think the COVID-19 pandemic has raised the need for reconceptualizing study abroad and reevaluating study abroad curriculum developments. In the corporate world, multinational companies are increasingly leveraging the benefits of technology by creating global virtual teams as a new platform rather than sending expatriates. In this context, it will be very interesting to discuss the value of studying abroad to groom our future global leaders. Now I'd like to introduce my longtime management department colleague, Dr. Ellen Anshaw, who's going to moderate the panel discussion today. Dr. Anshaw is a professor of human resource management, and she's an expert in mentoring. She has received numerous teaching awards, including LMU's Fritz Burns Distinguished Teaching Award. She's the co-author of Power Mentoring and has published numerous articles and book chapters on mentoring. Her work is frequently cited in leading media publications, including Fast Company, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. Dr. Ellen has shared her expertise worldwide as part of the U.S. Embassy's invited expert speaker program, and for many other global organizations as well. Ellen, thanks for joining us from London. Now I'd like to turn the program over to you. Can you please introduce our panelists and start discussion?
Absolutely. Can everyone hear me okay? I am in London. It is about 6 p.m. here. So on this, a bit rainy day, but we are delighted to be here with all of you. It is such a thrill to introduce two of our best alums, as well as my colleague and long-term friend, Susan Murphy, who will be coming in about 20 minutes or so. So let me tell you a little bit about our chat. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about where I'm at and some study abroad opportunities. And then I want to introduce you to Bree and to Matt, and then introduce you to Susan. And then we are just going to have kind of a podcast-like conversation. So I've got some questions prepared, but we want to be fairly informal. We also want to involve all of you. So if you have a question, as Hugo mentioned, feel free to just chat in. I also just want to give, kudos to Young Sun for putting this together. and to Jennifer, really who made this happen, and to Hugo also. So, and of course to our panelists. So thank you everyone. And thank you students for watching and being here with us. This is being recorded, so we'll be able to share this after it's over, and you'll be able to share it with your friends. So I wanted to mention that. So first of all, where am I? Well, I'm kind of sitting in the hallway right now in the fabulous area of Chelsea. So I'm in London and I'm teaching at our FIE, which is a Federation for International Education. It's a fantastic area of London. It is a program that we have had the pleasure of cooperating with for years. I know Bree is an alum there. This semester, we have 59 students here from LMU who are studying at FIE. If you want to know more, you can go to the Study Abroad website. They run this program every semester, so fall and spring. It's not me teaching every semester because I need to be back in LA with my colleague Youngson and in the sunshine, but it's somebody great every single semester. Students also take classes with professors from Oxford and Cambridge. I hear they're pretty good too. So I don't know if they're as good as LMU professors, but they're pretty good. So students are enjoying themselves. They're traveling every weekend. They're also doing 8-week internships. So that's my little plug for FIE. Now on to the panelists here. First of all, I have Bree with Bree, and I'm going to need you to say your last name because I always just call you Bree, and I don't want to do that embarrassing thing where I mispronounce. So when you I've had the pleasure of teaching Brianna and learning from her for several classes, along with Matt. I feel like we somehow got through the pandemic. It's like I think I've seen these Bree and Matt with on camera, on Zoom, with masks on, finally masks off, and this group of these two are very special for their resilience, for their curiosity, and for always keeping their cameras on online. Thank you. Bree is currently studying at the London School of Economics, pursuing her master's in human resource management and organizational behavior. She was super involved at LMU. She has been the assistant leader at the National Student Leadership Conference. She is very active in her in her Greek life. I'm going to let you talk more about that. And then we have Matt. Matt is originally from Florida. He did a massive traveling. He traveled, I think, to 26 countries, if I remember correctly. Went all over, fell in love with London, and decided to pursue graduate studies. So he's actually here right next door to FIE at Imperial College. So these are two highly ranked programs. I think when Susan comes, I'm going to introduce her then. She is my co-professor. She's lived in Edinburgh for 10 years. She's the chair of the Leadership Institute. But right now, enough about that. I'm going to go to Bree first, and then I'll go to Matt. So tell us, a little bit about your experience at LMU, but most importantly, what got you here to London, and what was the application process like, and how's it going?
Okay, well, hi everyone. Sorry, I think it froze. Am I good? Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Hi, my name is Brianna Butkowitz. So I started LMU in 2020 during the pandemic. So I was on Zoom my freshman year, but I was a business management and leadership major while I was there. And then, like Dr. Ensher mentioned, I was involved on campus. I was active in my sorority leadership. And then in the fall of my junior year, I decided to study abroad in London. And so I came and I studied at FIE. At that time, there was no LMU professors with us, and it was one of the first programs back from COVID. So it was very small. but I had such a life-changing experience when I was at FIE in London. And I know that's kind of cheesy to say, but I loved it. And I had known that I loved London before that, but that whole experience only reaffirmed that I wanted to come back here. So after I did my semester abroad, I returned to campus, and then I decided to pursue grad school to get back out here because with the visa situation and finding a job, grad school was a really easy way to make my way out here at first. And I definitely wanted to continue my education and study more HR specific things since I was just a general management major. But did you want me to talk about the application process? Yes, okay. So it was different for me than my application process for my undergrad. Um, it was essentially I applied to two schools. I applied to London School of Economics, where I am right now, and I also applied to the University of Edinburgh. And for both of those schools, it was a personal statement that was 1,500 words. And unlike the personal statement back home, where you kind of have creative liberty and they want you to go outside of the box, it was very straightforward for me. They said they want to know exactly why I'm applying to the school, the program, what specifically I could do to improve what they already have going, and what I want to do in my future. So that was a lot of pressure because other than the personal statement, it's really just your grades and your CV or your resume. So there was less like supplemental essay questions or anything like that. But I applied, and then I heard back from LSE within maybe 2 months. They offered me a spot. I heard back from Edinburgh much later, but I had already wanted to go to LSE, so I had committed there. But pretty straightforward, at least for LSE and Edinburgh. It was a minimum 3.5 GPA to even apply. They're both very academically rigorous schools. So yeah, that was kind of what I went through. And and the recommendation letters, of course, which Dr. Ensure wrote one of mine. So
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Matt, it's your turn. Tell us a little. I mean, I kind of probably stole your opening there, but tell us about, what you did at LMU, and then, what got you here and what that application process was like for Imperial College.
Yes, you did a fantastic job, by the way, so you didn't steal anything. Um, but yeah, originally from Tampa, Florida, went to LMU in 2018. Had the pleasure of having both Dr. Pike and Dr. Ensure during my time there. Um, so was a management major, and then was supposed to study abroad in London in I think 2020, right before the pandemic started. So obviously that was put on hold. And then before you know it, I was graduating, so I didn't have the opportunity to do it then. So when I finished up undergrad, I decided to come over here, did a bit of traveling, got to know London fairly well, and then actually went back to LA, worked in the real estate world in Santa Monica for a bit. Um, but when I was ready to move on from that, started looking into how to get back to London. And it's a bit difficult to get over here if you want to stay over here. So student visa or work visa is pretty much the only ways, and work visa is pretty difficult. So student visa it was. So I applied to Imperial, I applied to University College London and King's College London. And similar to Bree, I actually didn't hear back from UCL or King's before I had to put my deposit down at Imperial. So that made the decision pretty easy. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much the story to how I'm over here now.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'd love to hear about the academics and what you're studying, but maybe we'll come back to that. And maybe you could each tell us one thing you really love about London and being here, and one thing you hate or don't love as much. Okay, I'll start with you, Bree.
okay, I think the thing I love most about London is the public transportation here, especially since I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. LA is not necessarily known for their public transport either, but the tube here makes it so easy to get around and there's so much to do. So it really helps to have that available. And then the thing that I like the least is probably the food because it's, they're not really known for their food here. quite flavorless, I would say, but maybe that's just the American in me coming out. But yeah, those are my answers.
The food thing is really true, unfortunately. That's for the British food specifically, I'd say. I think it's just I don't know what they're doing over here. But all the other cuisines are fantastic. Tons and tons and tons of food to try. Obviously, pubs, that sort of thing. Public transit's fantastic. It's definitely a welcome sort of surprise coming from LA, where you can get around without having a car. Um, Sports too. Sports are fantastic. So if there's any soccer fans out there, um, coming over here, just having absolutely no shortage of things to do. So you could do a different thing every night for a year and, still have things left over. Um, as far as things that I dislike, um, there's definitely some differences. I think internet connectivity is a bit of a struggle. Like right now, I'm really scared that my internet might just drop out because that's what happens over here sometimes. Um, seeing all four seasons is very nice, but coming from Florida and California, I'm in for a really rough winter. And the sun's not out as much during this time, but I think if you could handle like the June gloom of LA, I think you should be fine.
Okay, well put. And I have to say, I agree with all that. And I'll answer it. I love the walkability of London. Like, I feel like as a woman, it's super safe. I feel like I can walk hours and I feel really comfortable even at night. I love that. You already mentioned the food. I don't like the trash on the street. So we have a weird thing in my flat. We're only supposed to put trash out twice a week, but people just come and literally put trash out on the street all the time. And I'm in a really nice area. So it would be like you're walking down the streets of Beverly Hills and there's literally bags of trash. But hey, there's no perfect place. So London is pretty fabulous. I have to say it has kind of stolen my heart. I would definitely consider spending more time here, and it's amazing overall. Well, let's go back and talk a little bit about academics, because of course that's part of it too. So, Bree, tell us a little bit about your classes. Like, I know you have, is it a one-year program and you have a thesis? Will you just kind of break it down for us a little?
Yeah, so it's 1 year, which is another big upside to doing grad school here, at least in the UK. Most of their programs are just 1 year compared to the US, which is usually 2 or more. But 1 year program, I am studying human resource and organizational behavior. So the organizational behavior portion is just one of the 3 streams I could have taken. So the other ones were general HR management, and then international employment, and then org behavior, which is what I decided to do because I really like the psychology aspect of teams and management and that sort of thing. So right now I'm in classes. I have lectures and seminars. And then in the winter term, I will choose new electives. Around March, we wrap up teaching and we're expected to spend our time from April to September writing our dissertations, which are 10,000 words. And you can go with qualitative or quantitative data, but you have to collect it yourself. And the nice thing about my program is that it's completely up to me what I want to write my dissertation about. It just obviously has to be relevant to the organizational behavior world. So it's definitely daunting, but I'm excited, and I'm excited that I get to pick what I want to write about because that will definitely help motivate me when it comes to the long hours I'm sure I'll be spending writing the 10,000 words.
Okay, and so you're probably going to hate this question, but do you know what your dissertation is going to be about yet?
Not yet. So I don't have to submit a proposal till the end of January. So I've been throughout my lectures this term, every time I hear something that kind of piques my interest, I'll jot it down. And I think when I go home for Christmas, I'm going to do some self-reflecting and think about what I want to dedicate the next 6 to 8 months of my life to learning about.
Awesome. Probably something on mentoring. I don't know. I had to work that in. All right, Matt, tell us more about your a 1 year program too, right?
Yes. Uh, I'm also a 1 year program. I'm doing a program called International Management. Actually very similar to the curriculum of the management major at LMU, with sort of an international focus. But Dr. Pike really helped me out with that through his international business class. So felt really prepared coming over here, and then since starting the modules, uh, again, very similar. So I mean, we have like data analytics, financial management, organizational behavior, like all that really sort of like mix of different aspects of business that sort of just make you well-rounded. But yeah, just a year-long program. Luckily, no dissertation. It's actually quite fun. We have a couple of big international trips, so we're going to Cape Town in February, and then we're going to Singapore in March, and then maybe Helsinki in April. So they keep us very busy. It's a really fun course. It's got that international feel to it. And it's been really interesting so far.
Awesome. Okay, and I apologize for the audience. You might be kind of laughing. I am sort of moving around here. Yes, now you're getting the whole perspective of the London flat as I'm kind of maneuvering around with the internet and so on. So that looked a little bit weird. Sorry about that. So you have all this great travel as part of your program. Kind of jealous and love to hear that. Um, so what will happen, and after the program is over, where's your next trip going to be? What are your future travel plans? Would you want to live in would you want to live in LA again, Florida? Would you want to stay in the UK? So kind of like what's next, you know? And I'll start with Bree again, and then I'll go to Matt.
So I'd love to stay in London. Like Matt said, it's pretty hard to get out here and just work right away. But the beauty of the student/graduate visa is once we're both done with our degrees, the student visa transforms into a 2-year graduate visa. So I'm set for the foreseeable future, granted that I get a job here. But I'd love to stay here as long as I can. So I have no intention to move back to LA or Arizona, where I'm from, anytime soon. But that being said, the job market is very competitive here. As an American, it's hard to get a job here. They definitely don't sugarcoat that at school. They make it known to us that it's going to be a challenge, but I'm hoping that the international work experience and obviously everything that I learned at LMU will land me a good job here when I'm done.
It's all about networking. I know you both are so good at that. All right, Matt, what's your plan? And like, what's your next country and so on? Did you, because I knew you were trying to decide like where you were going to go. Did you decide on Singapore or?
Yes, yeah, they came out with the application results, so I'm going to Singapore. So as far as like next trips, I think obviously home for the holidays, so I'll go back to Tampa for Christmas, which will be nice, and see the sun for the first time in a couple weeks. But after Singapore, I'm hoping to travel around Asia, maybe go see some of the friends that I've met in their home countries, Vietnam, China, Taiwan. Um, so sort of extend that trip a little bit more. But as far as long term, I would also love to stay here just to sort of, spice life up a bit, have a change of scenery for, an extended period of time. Um, Not sure about full time returning to LA. Next full time spot will probably be Tampa. Um, but yeah, sort of just like playing it by ear. Like once you're over here, you can sort of get a taste for it. Again, like one of the huge benefits is that it's only a year, so it's really not that much of a commitment. So I mean, if you hate it, obviously you can, run back home. But if you love it, like Bree said, you have that chance to make it into almost like a 3 year thing, where you can stay here, really feel it out, really put some roots down. So you have a bunch of options. I think it's really nice to sort of have it be flexible, and you can sort of just get over here and see how you feel.
That's great. I've had a couple speakers come in, and they get asked the question a lot. Well, how can we stay here? And they said, well, it's pretty much you have to get a job with a company and have the company, bring you to the UK and work for that company, or find someone local to marry. And so this is now a third way, because we're not advocating that early marriage in your career to stay here. But I love that we've learned from the two of you that if you do graduate school, then you are given a 2-year window to stay as long as you have a job. So that's a real plus in terms of considering graduate school abroad. I love that. And, I think it was like brave of both of you to do this as well, because it's quite different than studying abroad, because studying abroad, like here, my students really have a cohort. They do have a local LA professor. I guess that leads me to a question you didn't know I was going to ask, but like, what kind of resources and support do you have here? And like, what advice do you have for students who are thinking about doing graduate school abroad? And you know what? I'm gonna break it up a little. I'm gonna start with Matt this time.
Okay, I'm glad I was prepared. As far as resources go, I think like FaceTime is obviously huge because there's like that initial reliance on pretty much everyone from back home for that first couple weeks. And like I think everyone sort of knows this, but no sugarcoating it, it definitely sucks. Like moving over here, you just have to deal with all of that like really annoying stuff that comes along with moving. So it's definitely takes a lot to sort of ramp up. But obviously coming over here for school and then having that built-in network, that's extremely helpful. And then just like being social, it's really easy to be social in London, obviously because of their like, social culture with pubs and all that stuff. Like there is sort of a more communal neighborhood vibe here sometimes, especially around the schools, especially if you're in like student accommodation. But also you have access to similar stuff that you do in LA, like virtual meetup apps like Meetup. So you can, lean into that. You can go to, exercise classes, all that sort of stuff to just sort of, expand the network at first. But I think a lot of it comes down to effort, like how much effort you put into it. It's reciprocated. I think you get a lot out of it, depending on how much you put in. Um, but yeah, like the dependable option is obviously all of your friends and family back home, and then during that transitional period, rely on them. And then once you're past that, you'll have, a bunch of friends here.
Oh, that's really well put. I like that. That is good advice. And it is, sometimes with the time change, I've realized that I have to kind of like take a little break from my LA friends and even my dear colleagues, because otherwise at night I'm just here every night on Zoom for hours and hours. So it's like I think that was my hardest thing, like trying to balance that at first. Like how much LA time do I give this experience versus how like just being here. So I had to kind of cut back on all that like LA contact. So Bree, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I completely agree with Matt. I echo everything he said. I think school has been an amazing way to meet people for me. I can't imagine not being in school here if I had just moved by myself and even went to work. It's just that community, even though it's very different than LMU and my undergrad experience, people here are, at least in postgrad, like all different ages, all different walks of life. Some of my classmates are married, some of them live with their partner, some of them graduated from a school in the UK last year, so they're younger than me. Like it's really a mix. So there's less of like freshman year, like we all need to make friends. That's definitely not the case, but just showing up, like Matt said, putting the effort in. I also want to agree with him. I thought that since I had studied abroad in London before, the transition would be quite easy for me. Like I know my way around. I love the city, but that definitely wasn't the case. It was brutal my first month here, like feeling kind of overwhelmed, far away from everybody I know. But leaning into the routine is what helped me the most, and like throwing myself into my classes. reminding myself that like I can't just to put the effort in, like go to the things that maybe you're wondering if you should go or not, or will there really be anyone there that I would get along with? Like, yes, just go. Why not? Because there can only be good things happening from that. So yes, that's my advice.
The advice is yes. Well, I think one thing I did a lot of was I know I always talk about this, so you two are going to laugh and roll your eyes, but I literally did go to LinkedIn. I looked at the alums who were here in the UK, and I totally reached out, and some of them were just like so sweet, and I was really asking if they would come and be guest speakers, and they were like, yes. In fact, at a certain point, I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, I have more guest speakers and people coming than I even have scheduled for. I would say my other advice would be have some visitors come, but maybe not quite in the beginning. I think I had a lot of visitors, and then I just felt a little bit overwhelmed trying to, get everything ready for class and then figure, routine life kinds of things out. And then also, ask myself if I was in entertainment mode or if I was in work mode. So I think visitors can be really helpful, but you want to sort of balance it out. But definitely reaching out to those alums. I was really heartened by the positive response. The other thing I'm just going to mention, and I think if we can put him, my chat is only for hosts and panelists, but I want to just give a shout out and a mention to Tyraz Pai. He goes by T Pi. He's a musician. He is also a class of 2024 alum. He's in class right now. He's at University of Westminster getting a degree in music and management, so another management leadership major. He's in class, so I said, no, don't miss class to come to our panel. But I know that he would be so happy to also talk to anyone. And, I think he's finding that the music scene here has been really, really open. So we have, we've got 3 amazing alums here. But that's pretty exciting. I see there's a couple questions in the Q&A. What advice would you, I think we did that one. Outside of the cultural difference, do you feel like you're earning more than you would at graduate school in the US? Earning more. Oh, maybe if you could do you mean earning more after they graduate? Because I don't think that either one of you can work right now, right?
No, no working right now, luckily.
No
Yeah.
time to work. And we're also not allowed to work more than 20 hours a week on our visa. So we can't really get like any sort of real job.
Okay. So I think that question was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eileen, who I believe asked the question. Oh, I see it coming in. Do you think you'll earn more? Oh, like learning, experience, connection, business. Do you feel like you're earning more at graduate school in the US? Like learning, experience, connection, business. I think like gaining more. Do you think that you're gaining more than you would if you did graduate school in the US? That's a really
I
interesting
think that
question.
it meant learning, right? Not
Learning.
learning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the
Got it.
title.
Okay. Learning more than you would if you were in grad school at the US. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
May I? I'll take this one.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like the question touched on, I think like the most major aspect of this whole experience is just like going extremely far out of your comfort zone, and the benefits that come along with that like set you extremely far apart from, your peers. Pretty much anyone. Like this looks fantastic on a resume because you're obviously not, afraid to do something that's like pretty drastic, I guess.
Mhm.
You're also interacting like in my cohort alone, I think there's like 28 nationalities represented. So I'm interacting
Oh.
with kids from all over the planet. They all have their different um, you know, different little quirks to them, different ways of working, different ways of communicating. So I mean that's major. And that's like in a way sort of the reason you're here for the experience. as far as the actual academic rigor, uh, I do think that LMU specifically prepares you really, really well for this experience. So have measured expectations as far as, you know, you're not gonna come here and be surrounded by like super geniuses. Um, LMU does a really good job and I think sets the bar really high where you can pretty much go into any room around the world and have like a pretty good idea of what's going on and fit in pretty naturally. So obviously the experience aspect of it is fantastic. The actual learning aspect of it feels very familiar actually. For my program specifically, the academic rigor is not something that's overwhelming at all. Like I said, especially going from a management undergraduate degree to this international management graduate degree, it's a pretty seamless transition as far as academic rigor goes. It's not really overwhelming.
Good to know. Bree, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just add, I think personal growth will be at an all-time high for you if you choose to go abroad for grad school. I've probably learned more about myself in the last few months than my prior 22 years on the planet. So I think in that sense, you'll really gain a lot of knowledge and kind of direction and where you want to go in life and the type of person you want to be. And the cohort itself, like Matt mentioned, is incredibly diverse. I would say LMU is a fairly diverse school as well, but the experiences I had there are almost incomparable to here, where you're really hearing straight from the source for a lot of these topics that we're discussing. And management is universal. And so it's super interesting. And I can't imagine learning the way that I am unless it was from my peers at times. So, yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And hello, Susan. I'm going to give you a chance to catch your breath. And then I see one more question from the participants, and I think it's a really interesting one. It's about living expenses. So one of our participants that, says, I'm paying $1,700 a month right now for an apartment. What are the living expenses like? And I think it's fair to compare it to LA. So yeah, what's food, rent, all of that? How do you think it compares? What's that like? Maybe I'll do Bree first.
London is very expensive. I think it is very comparable to LA or New York. The problem is also that the pound is more valuable than the dollar. So the conversion rate is bad for Americans because everything costs more in dollars here. Living is very expensive because heating your apartment is expensive, electricity, water, all of those things, and food in general. So yeah, $1,700 I would say is like pretty good here. It also depends the area that you want to be in and like how far you want to be from central London where it's most expensive, but then you have to count transportation costs. So generally it's very expensive, but I would say manageable, like with roommates and a budget and a clear plan about how you're going to manage, but it is very expensive.
Yeah, definitely not great news there. It's extremely expensive and also the exchange rate right now is really sad because something will be like 10 pounds when in reality that's like $13. So like, you're not thinking like that, but it's a bit sad at times because it does like add up really quickly. But that's not to say that it cannot be done. I have a bunch of friends here who aren't even necessarily on like shoestring budgets. They've just budgeted really well. They know exactly how to sort of operate within their means. They know, maybe I'm not going into central London every single weekend and that's fine. So it's definitely possible. So don't be discouraged by that. It's definitely expensive, but not impossible.
Yeah, I think also being in LA, I don't think the sticker shock is quite as high. But yes, like Matt, I was in a little bit of denial at first. And then once you get your credit card and your Apple Pay shows up, you realize, yes, there is this is quite different. Good news is when you travel over to Europe, it is much cheaper. So if you go to Portugal, Malta, Italy, you'll find that things are much less expensive for a nice meal, and a place to stay and any shopping. So and I think of course that is something that we're all super happy about being here. So at this point, so Matt and Bree, you hang in there. I want to give full disclosure. I'm going to introduce Susan Murphy to you all. I'm also going to let you know that my battery is dying. So if you see me run frantically into the other room and then my face magically appears next to Bree, that is what is going on. Um, so, okay, right now. So Susan Murphy is joining us. Dr. Susan Murphy is the chair of leadership at University of Edinburgh. She is a force in the field. She is one of those rare people who is a big name in two areas of scholarship, leadership, as well as mentoring. And I will tell you that, she walks the talk with mentoring. Just to brag about her a little bit, I had the pleasure of being mentored by Susan very early on in my career. It turned into a lifelong writing partnership and friendship. Recently at the Academy of Management, three of her students won all sorts of awards. She is very well known in executive leadership, and I know she's just from a meeting, and so she is not on the admission side at all. She is definitely in academia, but I asked her to, share with us a little bit about her life at University of Edinburgh. She was recruited to join the faculty, I think about 10 years ago. You can correct me on all this, as you always do. And it was a big decision whether or not she should leave the US and come over, but they really wanted her. They recruited her hard, and now here she is. And I think she's staying here. And Susan, thank you for joining us. Please tell us a little bit about University of Edinburgh. That is a beautiful place to be.
It is. Right now, I'm going to sound really echoey. I'm sorry about that. I'm in the Surgeons Hall. One of the things that the University of Edinburgh started, I believe, in 1563. That's right, not a typo, 1563, is known for the medical school here. So absolutely. It's the Surgeons Hall. There's a lot of busts of, I'm actually going to show you. I had to go on my phone because my Zoom wasn't working. I don't know if you can see some of these guys here. So these are old physicians and surgeons back in the day who started at the medical school. So what's it like to kind of live and, be educated in the UK? I'll talk to you about a couple of the programs that we have for students and some of the things that they say. And one is our MBA program. And our MBA program is really this intensive one-year program that allows students to work with students from around the world. And so sometimes our biggest cohort will end up being American students, but they're only maybe 30% or 25%. We have students from Indonesia, South America, such as Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, students from Europe, students from Germany, all over the place. And so, if you're looking for that real international experience, that can be really fun. We've also got another thing too, which is gender equity on our business school admissions in the MBA. And we got to that because of our admissions standards. We're always looking for people who are going to make a difference. We also have kind of this no jerks rule. So if people don't mesh with the cohort, they're not there to learn, they're there to brag, and do some other things not good. We don't usually accept them. And so, the MBA feels just really inclusive in the sense of all around the world, learning from other people. And I think that most of you who are on international experiences really understand how great that international experience is to understand yourself better. So you start kind of questioning, all the things you've learned growing up and kind of the culture you were in, and you kind of pick and choose, what works for you. I have two children. They've been here since they were 3 and 7. and now they are like 18 and 15 or 19 and 15. And so they're kind of, citizens of both of those worlds, and they've traveled a lot. They go on trips to Rome and Portugal, as you said, Croatia. Seamus just did his Croatia trip for his senior year and everything. So that's one of the great things, is being so close to all of Europe, but being here in the UK. We also have specialty master's programs in finance and management. I think the admission standards are pretty competitive, but some of those programs are a bit expensive. So, you get a good mix of students from around the world. Again, we try not to get one dominant country, because as soon as you do that, then the students who come say, why did I travel 6,000, 9,000 miles to just be with students I could have been with in my home country? But I think it's nice kind of getting a different perspective. It kind of makes you think more about the kinds of things that you value. I would say that Scotland specifically is a little more of a culture that looks out for one another. I think living under English rule for a number of years made them quite, an independent sort of place. It's a small country, but at the same time, it's only 5 million. Think of that. Isn't that half of Los Angeles County?
Yep.
Here, right? Exactly. So compared to when I lived in Claremont and taught at Claremont McKenna College, this has been, Claremont McKenna College, of course, is a really great school to be from for my teaching experience, but it's also been really great here. I find my undergraduates are great. My master's students are very good and engaged, as well as my MBAs. So Edinburgh is a great place. I mean, most people who come here can't believe it. It kind of looks like Harry Potter land. It looks fake, like somewhere you might see Universal Studios, because there's so many castles and all of this stuff. But people are quite friendly, and it's a good place to live. It's a little less expensive than London, but it still has it. It's just the UK and expensive, and that dollar needs to go up in price as well. So that's all I've got to say, but open it up to questions. I don't know what people would like to hear a little bit more about. I'm in the middle of teaching an exec ed course right now, but I can stay with you all till about 10 more minutes. So any question, Ellen?
Okay. So I may be running into the other.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a question here from our audience.
Okay.
You see the role of international education evolving in preparing future global leaders. Ooh, how significant do you think studying abroad is for the progressive world? Why don't you start at that, Dr. Murphy?
Yeah. So I don't know where your school sits kind of in terms of encouraging people to do study abroad. But I remember when I was at Claremont, most of the students did a study abroad experience. And when I do a lot of Korn Ferry assessments, or a consultancy that assesses leader potential and things like that. And they always talk about that international experience, because it does help you see the US from sort of a different lens. It connects you to other places. It makes you feel at ease when you're living in other places. I mean, it was hard at first. I mean, I only lived really on the west coast of the US, so it was Seattle or Los Angeles, and they're pretty similar. But I don't know how it's going to change going forward, other than I just think that people need that experience. I think you start to question, like, I'm going to give you an example. So this paper I'm holding up right now is the size of the paper in the UK. And when people from the US not 8.5 by 11, their mind is blown that there could be any other size of paper. I know that sounds really stupid, but you're just like, what comes in a different size? And so just understanding that we all don't sort of see the world the same helps, when you're working with people who, might just live down the street from you in Los Angeles or something, that can really give you, and get to know yourself a bit better too, like what you value. So raising my kids, I raise them with, American values, but some Scottish and UK values as well, sort of these little citizens of the world, if you will. So I don't know how it will change, other than, there might be some more traveling, people may move around through their degree in some ways, spend, a semester terms sometimes in Spain, maybe one in the UK, maybe one in, Sri Lanka, wherever. I think you kind of see some of that.
And what do you think? I'm kind of curious. You said that you have a no jerk rule for your cohort. How do you figure that out? Does every student have an interview, or how do you suss that out? Do you have a secret AI thing that you do?
Oh, but maybe we'll get that secret AI thing working on that. No, the student is interviewed every qualified, well, sometimes before they're pre-qualified. So typically the people who we think we don't want, they actually correlate with a lot of other things. So they might be somebody who sees that we need 5 years of experience or 4 years of experience to be on the MBA, work experience. And they come in and they said, I've had 2 years and it's been really a lot of experience. And I don't understand why I have to follow the rule of having, 4 years of experience. So right there, asking to not have the same set of standards brought, to other people can be something as well. And just kind of an overconfidence, arrogance is something that we typically don't want, because we need that cohort of about 70 people to gel. It's a small program. We don't have a lot, so we need them to gel. And, somebody who seems to think they already know all of the answers and everything, it's not going to be a good fit for that program going forward. We also encourage people who have a lot of experience but seem to think maybe they're not right for the program. We get them thinking a little bit more about what they can contribute to the program. So it's not just about taking from the program, it's about what you contribute to the program. At least on our MBA, that's how we look at it.
That makes sense.
Part of the secret.
Did you see that seamless transition that I just made? Running down the hallway because I wanted everyone to see a flat. I left my power cord, speaking of one of those things, and now I can't charge my computer until tomorrow, when I will walk over 30 minutes to get it. So all good though. So I'm just going to see if there's any other. No, I think we're at the same number of questions from the audience. Youngsun, I think you had sent me a really interesting question via email, and it was really kind of asking about how the pandemic has impacted the studying abroad, and then also people wanting to go to graduate school abroad. Do you want to? So maybe each panelist could talk a little bit about how the pandemic made an impact on, and how you think it has impacted study abroad. Youngsun, did I phrase your question okay?
Yes. So I think that Susan, yeah, it's nice to see you again. It's been a while since I saw you. I don't know how long ago, but I asked this question when I introduced this program. I think the COVID-19 pandemic give us a lot of question about whether we still continue to need to send the students for the study abroad program. In other words, I think there's a growing need for reconceptualizing study abroad and reevaluating the study abroad curriculum requirements. And I mentioned also in the many multinational corporations now, they try to leverage the benefits of technology by creating global virtual teams rather than sending expatriates in person. So would you please just discuss the value of studying abroad is still intact, or even though you briefly mentioned about global citizenship, how do you think that the sort of the dynamics of the study of the program has changed since the in the aftermath of the pandemic?
Yeah. So let me answer that, because I'm going to have to run in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to go first here. So I think one of the things that we find was people sort of clamoring for sort of this in-person experience because of the fact that so many were working remotely and some remain remote or hybrid. And so they're not having kind of this close interaction. They feel like they've done enough sort of online and they want to come in person. And so even though these teams are working around the world, through technology, I think that in-person understanding of people that you get in an international program helps you then, even if you don't ever travel to Jakarta, because you know people from there, you kind of understand the culture a little bit better. You understand the nuance of differences. You understand how we're viewed as Americans, oftentimes in other countries as well. So I think between people kind of missing out on some social skills development, we do a lot of teamwork on our programs, of course, so you have to work with different kinds of people from around the world. And then also, I think it helps you if you don't even have that chance in your career to get to that international experience. So that's what I would add on that.
That is a
Okay,
great
thank you.
answer. And if people want to apply, you know
Yeah.
what? Can I just ask the question? Because I think anyone could find this. How much does it cost to go to University of Edinburgh? And I'm going to ask, okay, I think Matt's having internet. I'll ask Bree the same thing. I mean, anyone could find that out. That's not like really weird, right?
No, I think it's a lot. I mean, I think it's about £21,000. These are year programs on the MSc. I think the MBA is a bit more, maybe 24, 25, but that's less than US, high level MBAs by a lot. So while it sounds expensive, it's a year, most people can get loans, we don't really do any financial aid or anything like that for most time. I think we have a few scholarships for different types of students, but you can look it up too. I haven't been paying attention. I don't like to bring up money in front of the students.
I know.
All right,
Do you need to go, Susan?
yeah, I do. So
Thank you for coming.
I'll talk to you. I hope everybody has a good rest of the evening. Thank you. Bye.
Yes, thank you. All right, Matt, can I ask you that money question? Is that okay? Because somebody could find that out pretty easily, right?
I just had to look it up myself, because I wasn't sure. You're getting different figures, but like 40,000 pounds is what I've come across,
Yeah.
which is pretty steep, but I don't know. That's one of those things, like definitely try to pursue like all financial aid that you possibly can. Because in addition to tuition fees, you're gonna have to pay for so many other things. So like every at every turn you can sort of lean on financial aid, do so. Any scholarships to apply for, any sort of aid options that they offer, go for it. Because it adds up. So those aid options are definitely worth it.
The tuition fees at LSE are £28,000 for my program. They differ based on the program. And then, yeah, like Matt said, that doesn't include living or food. There's not really like meal plans here or anything like that. So at least 28,000.
That actually doesn't sound bad considering I think we're at what, $240,000 for a 4-year degree at LMU. I'm sure you all know. I don't know what we're charging our MBAs. 80,000. Youngson, do you have, I think our MBAs it was 120,000. So I think maybe I need to go get an extra degree. That actually is not so bad considering. And yeah, I think you all should be looking into graduate school abroad. The other thing I've noticed is there's a heightened interest in it, definitely. And I also think it does help you become a global citizen, and it just opens a lot of doors. So I would say I'm getting more requests for letters of recommendation for graduate school abroad. And I mean, I completely support it. And I think the difference is one of the things I was thinking about, like having diversity, I think, and Young said, you probably know better than I do. I can't remember the exact number of international students that we have at LMU. But one thing I notice is that sometimes it seems like our international students stay together more in their cohort. And I think what I'm hearing about graduate school is people do tend to mix and mingle more, which I think is great. I also think, Bree's caution about, people are at different life stages. We tend to get a very traditional student at LMU. So everyone at undergrad is about somewhere in their 20, 19, 20, 21, 22. For the most part, we get the traditional college student. But in grad school, you're going to get people who have very different life experiences. So that whole social aspect can be more difficult to navigate. Youngson, I see you turned on your camera. How can you
Yeah,
add
I
on?
think it's about 12% of the
12%.
student population is accounted for by the international students. But as you can imagine, after the pandemic, the number has decreased, for various reasons, including some of the political, the climate change in the US. I think that we are losing international students to other countries, such as Australia, Canada, and etc. And I tell my students, you don't have to participate in studying abroad program. I'm not saying this to discourage them from, doing that. But LA is, we have this is a cosmopolitan city on our campus. We have a lot of international students. So if you really want to make some connection and then build a relationship, you can do it here. You can start from here. Then usually what happens is you extend the relationship. You can visit your friends' home countries later, and then you can actually explore more. And then you might consider studying there or some other opportunities comes up. So everything can start from here in LA. You don't necessarily have to, go all the way to London or some other parts of the world, although, it's probably there are a lot more significant experiences, right, overseas than staying at home. As a couple of our alumni mentioned that, you can make yourself out of your comfort zone. It's the first time you learn about yourself. And as Brianna mentioned that she mentioned about her personal growth, probably that the single most important thing that she experienced by spending time, right, overseas. So yeah, that's my take on this issue. Yeah.
All right, for our two panelists, I love this question. What haven't I asked you that you'd like to share? I'm going to go with Bree first.
Okay, I think something that we haven't talked about too much is staying motivated academically in grad school here. I think at least in the UK, the grading system is incredibly different than back home. Essentially, your whole grade rides on maybe one essay or one exam. So you don't see the multiple assignments or participation grades really. So in order to keep up with it, like I have hundreds and hundreds of pages of reading to do every week, but no one is holding me to it. But then if I do bad at the end on my essay, then I don't pass. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. You have to have a certain level of self-discipline. I'll also say that because I'm doing a master's in something that I'm very interested in, it's easier to stay on top of things than maybe when I was an LMU student for some of my core classes that I was like, oh, this isn't really my thing. So it is, there's more like intrinsic motivation there, but grading scale completely different. You really can't get higher than a 70 on things here. That's considered a distinction. Yes. So they always warn, they're like, okay, don't worry if you get, like a 65, like that's actually good. So that's something that we haven't talked about that I think is good to know.
That's very interesting.
Well, the rest of you didn't see my face when she said that because our LMU students, I love you guys, you would flip out if you get a 65 or a 70. I mean, right. I hope you're nodding and smiling. Because even people who are getting, unless we're talking to the accounting majors, but in management and leadership, people are flipping out if they're getting a B minus. So that is really interesting, but we do have massive grade inflation in the US. So that's facts. That's real. Matt, what haven't I asked you, but you want to share?
What you said about like everybody should do a master's, I think that's interesting. And I think like taking a bit of time to understand like you know why you want to do it, I think is really interesting because for me, like going back to school wasn't necessarily like highest on my priority list. I did enjoy working. And I had been out of it, away from it for a bit of time, a substantial bit of time to get used to, life away from school. But I sort of saw it as like an experience thing. Like it's really, and I think that takes a bit of honesty, like, to admit, oh, I'm actually not really here for school. I'm kind of just here to like live my life, and school was like an avenue to do that. It's kind of awkward to say because, you're committing a ton to the academics of it. But like being comfortable enough, with your own personal mindset on it to admit like, hey, you know, I'm half here for school, but also half here for everything that goes on outside of school, and really understanding that like, half of the learning or even 60-70% of the learning takes place outside of the classroom. Um, so just being really honest with yourself and saying, I think it's totally okay to not necessarily want to come here to pursue higher education specifically, but more so to just pursue like a really fantastic experience that's gonna set you apart from a lot of other people and also help you to develop yourself.
That's a very interesting comment, Matt. I think that I was about to ask you the question, actually, that how you perceive the significance of study abroad in your academic studies and the impact of study abroad on your career prospects and life. And you just answered the question. So it's more than just the studying there, right? And then you just broaden your perspective, and then you experience that what's the life like, and then spending some time there outside at your home country, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys are like the top, nobody over here is like anything crazier than Dr. Ensher and Dr. Pike. Like, not to just, kiss ass here, but seriously, like nobody is really like blowing anything out of proportion. Like it's a lot of the same stuff. It's a lot of, standard academic just operations. But yeah, like knowing why you're here is huge, and it might not be 100% for school, and you got to sort of be okay with that.
Yeah, that makes, honestly, when I think back, I went and got my master's at USC because I didn't really know what I was doing, but they had a program. It was international training and development, but part of it was traveling to Malaysia. So I remember thinking, I don't really know what I want to do with my life, but I know I want to travel. So I will join this master's program. And it was great because it gave me internships and it gave me travel experience. And then after 2 years of being kind of cooked in that program, then I had a lot more clarity. So sometimes, an MBA program, we usually recommend that people wait about 5 years to get into, a top MBA program. That's kind of the conventional wisdom. But what I'm seeing now, kind of with what you are doing, these 1-year master's programs are really gaining a lot of traction and popularity with that awareness that sometimes people just want and need a different kind of experience, especially post-pandemic, because there was a level where you didn't get what you expected to get, from school and social life and work opportunities in the world due to that, experience that, that was several years. So, Young Sun, I know we're like hitting up at time. We're having a lot of fun though.
Yep.
So
Okay. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for moderating such an intriguing panel discussion. And I also would like to thank Susan. I know she already left. And Matt and Brianna for sharing your insights and experiences with us about this timely and important topic today. I know most of the audience are my students. And you guys, as you heard from our speakers, it is still quite important to have first-hand cultural experiences if you want to prepare an international business career. So I strongly encourage you to participate in LMU Study Abroad program before you graduate. probably that Matt and Brianna, you missed that opportunity because that you were in college during the pandemic. But my guess is probably that you've done this much earlier if there was no pandemic. In addition to management department capstone course, which includes a field trip, I think the next spring to Italy, Rome, Italy.
No, we're going to
management.
Tuscany and we're going to
Oh,
study
no,
slow food.
not Tuscany. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I know
talking
you
about
love
mine?
Rome, so I just
I know, me
assumed
too.
that that's going to Rome. Okay. And also the management department is going to offer a special international business course, as I mentioned, multiple times in my class for the upcoming spring semester, sponsored by the Center for Asian Business called the Exploring Asian Culture, which incorporates a 2-week field trip to Korea and China. Now we need to wrap up the webinar. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you who joined the webinar today. I hope you have enjoyed the program. We'll be back with new webinars in spring 2025. Until then, please stay safe and healthy. Before you leave, I'd like to ask you to complete a short survey at the end of this webinar. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.